So you had mentioned that I'm the principal developer. Well, I was at one time, but we have actually a really, really great team. So I'm just gonna give them a bit of a shout out because I know some of them are on here. We have about 3 front end and three or so front end developers, user experience pro Pearson. We have some back-end developers and some other people who work on our base code and things like that as well. So we're kind of a full service team now, and we're all virtual. All right. So what I figured we'll do today is we'll do a little bit of live coding because I kind of like doing that because it puts a pressure on, and we'll build an application. And I figured since we have, how many people do we have today, Mike?
33.
Awesome. So I figured what I'll do is I'll make a quick survey to see how I'm doing. And although BetterForms is it's a web publishing front end, and it says BetterForms, it's not really about forms as such. If you think of form rather than entering fields, form is like a page. Better layouts would probably be the better description. So what I'll do is I'll show you some stuff that we've built and that clients have built, and then we'll do a little bit of live coding. So I want to start with the most common use case, and that is a portal. This is a portal for a company, EMGS. And basically, this is just some test data here. So really, really common use case, and this virtually every business has this use case, is they need some kind of access that they can open up either to their suppliers or their customers or somewhere along that business workflow chain. And EMGS does medical inspections of gas fixtures, like if you have oxygen lever and stuff like that, and the pipes and all this stuff that run through hospitals. So the person who'd be using this would be like a hospital facilities manager, that type of thing. Here they can log in. They have a very simple interface, but this is all driven live by FileMaker. And I did just ping the developer for this. He was saying that they had moved their server and their server is not performing that well. So this one's a little bit slower than normal, but you'll still get a good idea. So, and in this case, they have some very simple metrics. They can put anything they want on these pages and define it as such. And they can go into these open issues here. And in this case, they have a number of different issues and some badging and some flags and things like that. So the user can, I guess, figure out stuff based on that. They also have, what's going on in here? There's a section for invoices where they can go into their invoices and download things, and they can download items and stuff like that from their FileMaker server. So that's a really, really common use case. And that's kind of low-hanging fruit, something that you can whip up super, super easy for any business. So if you are if you're a consultant and you're looking for some kind of a continuation, what can I do for my customer a little bit more? What could I give them access to? This is a great alternative. It's just a simple portal. We have some new templates where you can literally click a button and you get about a third of this built out for you automatically. So it's really, really easy. And if you have any questions, guys, as we go along, please, by all means, just jump in or chime in, and somebody can maybe echo them out at any point in time. Let's look at something a little bit more complicated now. This is a software as a service, which is where we're really finding that we have a sweet spot with FM BetterForms. About 25% of our clients actually have vertical applications, vertical or software as a service. There's a very subtle difference between the two of them, but for the most part, you're building a piece of software and you're either renting the use of that software, or the software is fulfilling the purpose of the business. So what this company does, they're located in California, and Dan Smith was the primary developer. You may know him from forums, and he also wrote the original JSON custom functions. And what happens here, let me just log in, is this company sells software that runs in the municipal offices in various cities in California, or towns, I guess, and it manages building permits and inspections. Put my super secure password in there. And here we are. So this is all powered live by FileMaker, by the way. So in this case, the user, the person who would be going through this experience or workflow is a contractor, or if you want to build a second floor in your garage, that kind of thing. So I can create a new application, but I already have a couple in here, and these would be my building applications. And you can see here is an application that's in progress. So again, very, very different user interface. And this one's a version 2 of their software. They had one running for about 2 or 3 years. And then they just about a half a year ago or so, just launched a second version here. It's got a few more features and things. So in this case, they have a number of different types of input elements. There's some conditional logic here. So that really, really reduces the visual or the mental burden of filling out an application. It doesn't feel like so much. This is really quite a big application. It doesn't look like much though. And that's what you want to do in terms of UI. You want to make something feel really, really light so that the user gets involved with it and they don't bail out because it's too much of a burden. This app is also responsive, and all BetterForms apps are responsive. I didn't really talk about this one. Let me go back to here for a second. And you can see what happens is, as I reduce this, the sidebar disappears. These information slugs here, or cards, they change shape, right? And that's what you want to have in terms of an experience. You don't want the screen redrawing, reflickering. If I do things like that, I can go back there. I can still reload my application and I'm back to where I started with and so on. So it's a real web app that you're building here. All right, so let's jump back to this this application here. This is basically after you submit your payment. There's a payment gateway at the bottom here. After I submit, I don't want to submit this one, but there's a payment gateway that would appear. And then I would go back to my applications and I can go to my projects. These are things that are already in the works. And we'll look at one of these projects. Here they can see all the summary, and this is their inspections. They can request an inspection and gather some various bits of data here. And this is kind of neat. It happens really, really quick here, but what's happening here? Let me just do this again. What's happening here when I click this is there's a layout in FileMaker that has an actual building inspection on it. And FileMaker is generating or merging in fields and generating a PDF on the fly, and then exporting that PDF down to the browser here. And actually, this is interesting. This looks different. Let me just see here. See what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's different ones or something. I'm not sure. But anyhow, that's live, freshly minted PDF coming from FileMaker. So you can imagine how powerful that is in terms of giving your users access to reports. You don't need to save those PDFs. They're actually generating it on the fly. All right, so that's that application. Let's look at maybe one or two more, and then we'll do a little bit of live coding here. So what is this one here? Oops. Oh, I just want to talk quickly about how we build stuff. We consult as well for clients. So we have a number of clients that build something and they say, hey, can this is working really great, but we want a little bit more professional UI and so on. So this is an example of we did for a vertical. And this is in Figma. Figma is if you don't use it already, it is a user experience design tool, I guess you could call it, or a drawing page layout tool. And this was an application that one of the designers that works for us, Fred Illis, you may have heard of him from uxedge.ca. He designed this for this client, for one of our clients. And it's a very, really nice interface. In this case, what the company does is they connect medical insurance companies to doctors for second opinions and things like that, from what I understand. So this was the mock-up or the design, the original design. And I'll show you what we built. And just to give you an idea what you can do with BetterForms here is the actual application, right? So you really end up with this pretty much, let me see if I can zoom that into the right size, pretty much pixel perfect design if you want. Doesn't mean every design has to be like that, but it certainly is nice when you're kicking up your application. Since this is a vertical, they're selling their use of their software. They want to have a really, really high quality front end. Let me just move this back in here for a second. And I'll move my zoom window out of the way. And from here, they go into the detail review, and you got a pretty good idea as a FileMaker developer that this is all live data here, but it's all test data, that this would be like a list view. Fred did something really interesting here. He put the metrics on the side, which is kind of a different approach. Normally, we always want to throw stuff on the main page. As a developer, we kind of tend to want to do this kind of thing. We feel dashboards should have dashy stuff on them. But you always also have to look and say, how often do I really read these numbers? I just want to have them as quick reference. So that's why this was done this way here. And then from here, we go into the detail view. In this case, this is Denise Ortega's information, and her medical files, history and revisions, and so on. Right, so it's a really, really nice application, and this is going to replace their existing BetterForms one. So this is like version 2. Right, one of the things really, really important if you're having a front user-facing app, like we already know that we're already doing tons of revisions on our internal application, but we're not always doing UI changes. We usually just throw buttons on there and we color them up a little brighter so we can see this brand new button out of the 50 or 60 that we have, and so on. So, but when you have a front-facing thing, like a vertical, something that's facing the public, you want to keep it fresh. You want to keep the feel of the application comparable to what the rest of the industry is. And the rest of the industry is every other app that they use online, right? People are really expecting that a polished web app now. They're not expecting, it's fine to have your staff. I know when I had a previous business, when I first started using FileMaker, my staff used my database and they never complained because that's their job. But general public, totally different story. So guys, any questions about this stuff so far?
Looks great.
Here's one more. Well, look at this one. This one's kind of fun. What happens here is this is for a company called Floristware, and Floristware is a software as a service CRM for flower shops. And I think he's got several hundred flower shops that all run and have a FileMaker app running in FileMaker client that sits in the flower shop. So he wanted something where all of these clients, these hundreds of clients, can push up to a central web app, and then that would send a text message to a driver. So this is what the text message looks like. It's pretty simple. You have a new update, and there's a unique ID you can see in there, in that message. And then when you click the message, it lands you on this page here. So it basically takes you to here. So this would be a driver who would receive this. So let's say John, the driver, and the driver would come in and he'd pick up his items. So he picks these items up. This is all being live updated in FileMaker in the background as I check on these. So that means if John leaves his app, he closes his phone or anything, this is saved in real time. There's a little bit, this particular design was designed by Fred as well. There's a little bit of some really interesting UX things that he did here is when you click on this, you're hitting this with your phone or your thumb. So normally when you click on this, you wouldn't see if it checked because your thumb would be covering up, unlike my cursor here. So he kind of toggles the background for just a split second, which is kind of nifty. And let me see. And oops, I'm just going to start this again here. There, I'm just going to go down here. Okay. All right. And then after they've filled out all of these, they begin the trip. And this is the first destination on the trip. And basically, they can get directions or they can pass up. Each individual shop would pass up the contact information, like maybe the receptionist or whoever they're supposed to. This is triggering my Skype here. Or whoever's supposed to receive that, they can get map and directions here. Once they arrive, they would have more of a detailed view where they grab the items out of the van. I got these 2 items. They can call up, and if there's any special notes like come through the back door or something like that, they would do that. And then from here, get a signature. So we'll grab a signature. Right, there's my signature. I'm good. And we grab that, and I can edit a note. This one has already been done here, but this is a test. And we're all done here. And then right away, it goes back right away to the next location. From a UX point of view, pardon me?
Sorry to interrupt, just real quick, I have a question here. Could you kind of quickly, I know you've been kind of touching on them as you go, but could you quickly just call out some explicit benefits that this offers over WebDirect?
Sure. First of all, this is what we're doing right now, cannot do in WebDirect. You could use maybe FileMaker Go, if anything, right? The main difference is this is on a phone on a driver. So unless they have a dedicated app, they're hopping in and out of their phone. They're getting text messages or making phone calls, or they're going into Google, or emails are popping up. They're jumping in and out of the application. So that doesn't really lend itself super well to WebDirect. FileMaker Go, yes. Now, this app has to be scalable to, say, 300 flower shops. Each of those flower shops has maybe between 1 and 5 drivers. Valentine's Day, it has a ton of drivers, and then, Mother's Day, and then the rest of the year, maybe one driver, two drivers. So that means you have to casually onboard some drivers. So the goal here was, when Fred designed this, is he wanted it to be dead simple, that anybody could just receive a text message and they could jump into the app, right? The app, that link stays active for 1 day. We authenticate the person by knowing their telephone number. That's secure enough because they have to walk into the flower shop and pick up the dozen roses. So you already know who that person is. So that's the biggest difference there. When it comes to these applications, this app here is used by offices all around the world. It's actually one of our busiest, and it's in our top 5 as far as network traffic in BetterForms. So they have a ton of traffic, ton of users all over different countries. It's not practical for them to install FileMaker, right? They had a WebDirect system originally, but one of the issues with WebDirect is just little things. People are expecting to be able to do this. They want to be able to hit that button when something doesn't work. They want to hit that back button and expect, oh, my back is to Google here. But once I navigate, because I just refreshed it here, but once I navigate to something and I hit the back button, they want that to work, right? That's the experience that they're expecting. They want to have a responsive layout. You can see what's happened here. Some of the columns actually disappeared, right? There's 6, 7 columns there, and they keep disappearing as they get smaller and smaller. So those are the fundamental differences, as well as cost. BetterForms has fixed rate, right? So it doesn't matter how much traffic you're using. Our network auto scales, and it can handle thousands and thousands of users. It can scale up to Google size, or if we really wanted to. So that's another benefit there too.
There was another question from Tony in the chat that I can answer, and it's if you support custom URLs, and I know you do. So you can set up a testing URL like myapp.fmbetterforms.com. But then I could do like portal.gomainspring.com. So you can custom your own URLs, and each one of those URLs acts as its own site. So you could set up your own staging site. You could set up your own production site. That way you can test out changes in different areas.
Yeah, and we have a new feature. You haven't seen this yet, Mike, but this is pretty cool. This is BetterForms, the editor, and I'm going to jump back into here as well. But just to stay in context with that, here are my apps that I have under this test account. This is a feature that's coming out. We're pushing so hard on this right now, and it's hopefully going to be out by the end of or beginning of next week in our early trials. But basically, the way this works is you have a development environment, staging, production. And when you're in your development environment, you can make settings there, and you were asking about domains. You can use, if I add a new domain in here, I can use a host domain, or I can bring my own and put my own domain in here as well. So this is brand new. Once we're done with this, you can deploy that app into staging and then into production. It has its own development environment. So you're basically moving the site along, and it's taking snapshots and doing some things like that. So it makes it really, really easy to have a really, really pro publishing environment or build chain where you're not having to establish that. We're also working on actually some integration with Auto so that you're pushing your back end, your FileMaker side at the same time as your front end. And that's going to be pretty exciting as well. So let's actually look at how BetterForms works. So I'm going to clean up some of my tabs. You guys have any questions on these, just let me know, but I hate all these open tabs. It drives me nuts. I do a lot of screen sharing and things like that. And the most I've seen was 48 tabs open, and I gave up counting. So I didn't even know they go down to just an icon if you have so many open. So, all right. So BetterForms is a cloud-based IDE. So it's a cloud-based development environment. And this is basically our editor here. And we have a few different categories of sections of the app. We have sites, which are like your application, and we have pages. So I'm going to go into pages over here. And I have a project called, where are we here, to do job application, Demo Corp job app. I'm going to click on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump over to here. And if you want to play the home game, you can enter demo.fmbetterforms.com. And you can follow along as we build this. All right, so we got a really, really simple thing. And what I figured I'd do is I'll make a quick questionnaire. And then later on, what we'll do is if we have time, we'll make a quick results page of the questionnaire. I've kind of sketched it out a few minutes while I was waiting for the call here, so it didn't take too long. So right now we have, oops, there's a typo in here, Namex. first name and we have last name. And I want to grab a little bit of information so that we can enter some information in here. And this is not like a questionnaire, like I'm going to send you blast you with some email stuff. So BetterForms, basically the way you control or design your form, it's not drag and drop as such. And there's actually a really, really valid reason why it's not drag and drop, which I'll get into in a bit. But what we do is we control the schema effectively through JSON. So you can see that from here, the section that I have highlighted, let me just blow this up a wee bit. I have a label key and it says first name. So I'm going to erase that. I'm going to hit Command S and save that. So that'll fix my typo. I have a last name field. I have some style classes. I don't really need to know a ton about CSS, but when you start to get into responsive apps, it's not as simple as just dragging and dropping. You have to think about what that shape of the items is going to happen, or what it's going to do when it gets into small screens. For example, this here is 3 out of 12 columns wide, but when I shrink this down, it suddenly jumps to full width. So you have to decide at what point you want those breakpoints to happen. And maybe you want something totally disappear. Maybe on a small screen, I don't need to show the last name, right? So you have to look at all of those kinds of things in terms of experience. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to add a little bit more. I think what we'll do is we'll put, maybe what we'll do, yeah, we'll make a quick questionnaire. So we'll ask, how we're doing or something like that. How is Charles doing? That kind of thing. Let's add a checkbox for starters. So I'm going to go over to my snippet tools here, and I'm going to make this a little bit, move this over because my Zoom is in the way. And I'm going to search for a checkbox. Here it is, right here, checkbox. I'm just going to copy that element, and I'm literally going to just paste it. So copy and paste. And right now it has a label that says, do you understand? I'm going to change that to attendance. And it said, I attended the meetup. Right, that's just a checkbox. So let's have a look at how that will render. Let's go back over to our demo page and refresh this. And great, attendance. Okay, we got a little typo. We'll fix that in a second. I attended the meetup. So we got a checkbox there. All right, we're pretty good there. Attendance, there we are. And what I want to do next is I want them to create a rating, right? How was it? That kind of a thing. Just really, really simple. So I think that's going to be like a drop-down box with some options, or maybe it could be radio buttons, but I'll do radio. Let's do radio buttons here. So I'm going to grab a radio buttons element, and it's going to actually end up in a weird spot here. Right now it has 2 values. You can see these values. Now these can easily come from FileMaker. These values here right now we have male and female, and it was terrible. Actually, poor. We'll go poor. Not quite as negative. Meh. This will be like, how we're going to rate my presentation today. Not bad. And we have to go in the opposite end. Is I so need this. Okay. All right. And we have a label. It says gender. We probably don't want to have that as the label. So we'll change this. How was the presentation? All right. How's the presentation? Something along that line. Now, let me just save that quick. And let's go over here. I want to talk a little bit about UI design. I mentioned earlier, BetterForms is separate, and it's kind of a weird spot for it, right? It doesn't feel right. That's something we do in FileMaker. You just throw stuff right all over. But as soon as you go into the web, it doesn't feel, it should be like down here. We generally make apps more tall because scrolling is like crazy easy on a mouse, where it used to be click, 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 and really hard, and grab something and grab over to the sidebar and drag it up. So the thought process was above the fold mentality, but that's changed now. Now we have things narrow and tall because most of the time we're using it on our phone. So I want to change that for starters. But let's have a look at the data. So I'm going to put some data in here. The browser automatically recognizes this. This is another thing that's different than WebDirect. My browser acknowledges these fields. Now, I think somebody had mentioned accessibility earlier on. Was that? Did Brian, was that you? You had mentioned about access.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So accessibility is a really important thing. Now, we don't even talk about it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody in FileMaker even talk about it ever. That's why I was kind of surprised. It kind of caught my ear. accessibility falls into a bunch of different things. It's basically how easy can this be used by somebody with some type of impediment to consuming the interface. So for starters, yeah, we have basic accessible things like tabs, right? Moving across with a tab. That's a good start, and FileMaker can do that. But FileMaker doesn't work well with screen readers. I don't know about FileMaker Client. I've never actually used a screen reader with a FileMaker Client, but web apps really lend themselves well to that, as long as the developer keeps that in mind. So if anybody's worked with any kind of accessibility type stuff, the things you have to pay attention to are color contrast ratios, font sizes, semantic naming of elements, so that when the screen reader moves across and the person's using this, it says on the screen last name field, that kind of thing. And that's really important. We don't think about it too much now because it's 90% of our users in FileMaker are our own employees. But as soon as you open your app out to the rest of the world, you really have to consider that. And in some areas, it's a legal requirement as well, depending on what the application is. So that's something to think about. And you can actually control a lot of that stuff. It's already out of the box, relatively semantically named, but you can control a lot of that accessibility stuff as well. All right, so I want to move this down. Right now, it's actually going to look okay if I make this on a smaller screen. It looks perfect right under here. But things naturally in a responsive layout flow from left to right. So I want to move this down. I want to clear the rest of this row and move this under here. And then we'll add a button, and I think we're done with our simple survey here. So what I want to do is I'm going to look for this clearing element. And I'm just going to paste this clearing element in between these two fields. So there we go. And I'm going to put one more at the very bottom here. So So I'm going to put it right here. And then I'm going to add a button. Right. And we'll wire this up to FileMaker. Right. And if I'm going too fast, folks, just by all means, just chirp out what's going on and say, hey, I missed that step or something. Hopefully I hit save. I forgot if I did. All right, so there we go. We're looking pretty good. First name, last name, and I attended, and then we have our radios. That's pretty good there. Now let's go back into here and let's talk about the data. So because I got sidetracked on accessibility. Who's that guy? There we go. It's kind of funny how you end up with a random developer's last name I don't think I've ever typed his name in my field here. But I don't know, the browser does some voodoo. So, all right. So BetterForms is really loosely coupled to FileMaker. It has a tight FileMaker integration in the sense of FileMaker can control everything you see on the screen here, including the design if you wanted to. But it's really loose in terms of data coupling. And that's really good because it gives you a lot of flexibility. When you design a FileMaker layout, we design based on context, right? We're sitting on a layout. So we're sitting in a field that sits on a layout, which is bound to a table occurrence, which is connected to a table, which is connected to a record, which is connected eventually to the field. So that's our stack. All right. BetterForms, we're sitting in a field, and that field is connected to a data key and a JSON object, and that's it. Right. There's no other connection otherwise. So if we look under the hood here, I have the development tools turned on. And we look under the hood at these bits of data, that'll give us a bit better of an idea. So you can see there's something called gets it. And that was this default key. So I want to change that to attended, right? We have this gender. That doesn't make sense. We need to change that name. First name and last name are pretty good. And so we just need to change the keys. And this data object or the data model, it's a model of data because it can be deep. That is what gets passed back to FileMaker. So we'll look at that in just a sec. So let me just fix those things up. So the gender we're going to change to rating, and this gets it. We'll say attended. There we go. All right. So that'll fix our keys. And if you have this demo.fm BetterForms open, you can refresh, enter some data, and have a look at these tools, and that'll give you a bit better idea what's going on here. Okay, now we got a button, but click, button's not doing anything. Just like in FileMaker, I go over here and there we go. I grab and draw some random button. The button has an action, right? So we have to associate what we want the button to do. FileMaker can run a single script step where you can run an entire script. BetterForms almost exactly the same. So we have a button here, push me. I want to say, I hate using submit. I prefer something that's more like the verb that what you're doing. Submit is, I guess, can be, but I'm going to say report rate. That's a good one. All right. Inside this button, you see that we have an array, JSON array, or sorry, an empty array called actions. So that means it can take a bunch of actions. It can take instructions in there. So the action that I want is I want to run a hook into FileMaker. I want FileMaker to basically control. And when we design web apps, it's really, really important that FileMaker is your source of truth. If you've designed any web apps outside of FileMaker that connect to FileMaker, so for example, if you used PHP-based apps, or if you use Node with some kind of front-end work, those types of apps, generally you have a repetition of your business logic sitting inside your PHP app. And then the same thing in your FileMaker app. So if you have something that says creates a new invoice, and then after it creates a new invoice, it reduces some numbers off of inventory, and then from there it maybe sends an email out. Quite often, depending on your architecture and how you've designed your stuff, you'll have two code bases. Now you have two code bases to maintain. One of the biggest things that we get is we get people saying, we had a student who was coding this stuff up and now they left, and I can go in and make really small changes with the editor, but I can't really add any new functionality. So I see these really old and broken front ends, public front ends. So here we're designing only the user interface, but we're going to pass off all of the business logic control back into FileMaker. All right, so I want a hook, we call it, or utility hook, and that is an action. And what that will do is it'll effectively run a script over in FileMaker, and I'll show you how that works in a second. I'm going to paste that in here. And I'm not going to hit save yet because probably a whole bunch of people are going to click buttons. So actually, maybe we can do, I'm just going to go over here real quick. I just want to make sure that nobody's going to, yeah, we're good. Okay. All right, so there we go. So now when I push that button, it's going to run a script in FileMaker. Now what I've done behind the scenes, or ahead of time, is I've gone to my server section, I hit new server, and I entered my server information here, and I selected a gateway, the data API or the XML gateway, and I created a connection. And basically that tells BetterForms that my FileMaker database that's sitting on our development server here, it's alive, basically. I've also entered in some credentials into BetterForms, so it knows what credentials to use to talk to FileMaker. All right, over in FileMaker, just go to browse here. Browse. Over in FileMaker, I've done one other thing too. I've pasted in some custom functions that are we're going to use a couple of them in a second. And I have added an empty folder of script steps, right? So it's a bunch of more or less empty scripts, a bunch of scripts in here. One of them is called job application, and that's the one that's going to be bound to this page, this web page that we're building. So in here, I have a script called onUtility, and there's not much in here right now. A bit of logging at the beginning, and it exits with true at the end. Good practice. And that's it. So there's nothing in here. So if we wanted to create the most basic of things, like a hello world, we would do something like show custom dialog, if this was FileMaker, and we'd say, you know, hello, right? Or thank you, or thank you, or whatever we want to say in there. So since it's the front end, but we still want FileMaker to be the source of logic, we interact a little bit differently. So we're going to do it with some global variables. And the first one we're going to use is called $BF actions. And actions are the script steps, the same actions that I put in over here into this page, the same actions that I stuck in here, these actions I can stick in FileMaker. What that means is FileMaker can do things like go to layout or go to page. It can do things like run JavaScript even on the front end. It can update the page. It can show alerts and modals and all kinds of things like that. And I wanted to show a modal. So I have a custom function called BF set action modal. All it's doing is it's creating a bit of JSON. So I'm going to show you that in a second. I don't need a title type. We're going to put, this is an icon type. So I'm going to say success. We'll just show a little animated icon, make the user feel good. It's going to say great. Thank you for your rating. If applicable, if good, we will invite him back. Okay, something like that, right? Maybe it's just gonna be scary here. We can go with a theme, light or dark theme. All the kids go with dark themes I see when I work with people, so I'm gonna go light, and I don't need any additional options. So that's basically what this is doing here, is it's just creating some JSON. It's just making it easy for me to format. If I look in my data viewer and have a look here, I'm just going fast, so if you need me to slow down, by all means do. JSON format elements, let's do this. If we paste that in there, that's the thing I just made. This just creates just a bit of JSON. That's it. Creates an object and actually adds it into an array. So that's BetterForms is going to run this script. It's going to pick up this global when I save this, and then save that and refresh this. And then it's going to show the modal. So you can give that a try. So we click great, and there, great. Thank you for your rating. If good, we will invite him back. All right. So that's pretty good so far. Does that make sense, sort of? Folks, what I've done so far, I've kind of gone quick, right? But basically, we've wired a front end up to the back end, sort of. All right, let's do the actual real FileMaker stuff, the real business here. So this is, the rest of it's going to be pure FileMaker. So it's going to be go to layout. I have a layout already called applications. It's in here. New record. And set fields, right? Set fields. The first field I want to set now I don't have a table that exactly matches my use case, so we're going to kind of hack it up a bit. First name, that's pretty good. And now, where are we going to get the data to set into the field? The data comes in another global variable called BF, and it's called model. This model is the data model that we saw when we looked in the DevTools. Okay, it's that same piece of object, or same JSON object. So it's a JSON object, so we have to do JSON get element. Out of the model, we're going to get, we're going to get a key called name first. I like semantic names, and I always put the classification first so that it orders nicely and I'm very predictable, but whatever your naming convention is. You do have to pay a little bit of attention to names, and generally you should be doing that anyway. But the most important things, there's maybe 4 or 5 key points, and one of them is the names are case sensitive, name last, and LASST. The names are case sensitive because it is JSON, of course. And generally, because you are interacting with the front end, you may want to reference that key in some kind of calculation, some kind of JavaScript calculation, which means now that that key can't have hyphens in it, and it can't have spaces as well. So that's another thing. And then for execute SQL, you should always pay attention to those as well. Okay, so let's see what else do we have in the front. We have this attended, and we have the rating. So I need to put those in there. So the attended, we'll put it approved. That's kind of not really the same field, but that's close enough. And the rating we'll put in comments. Approved, and what did I call it here? What was it? Just want to see what the field was. It's called rating. Oh, attended. Okay, so let me copy that. Attended, so we're going to get attended. We pick it out, and we need to do one more field. It should look all really familiar. Comments is where we'll put the, actually, I guess we could put let's put a real comments field on there. So I'm going to say keep comments as comments. So we'll put a real comments field on. I think that would be important. And finally, we need one more, which is the rating. And we'll put rating under, wait, that's totally unrelated, but sort of kind of makes sense. And rating. Okay. Yeah, let's do a quick code review here.
You missed your comments key on line 22.
Line 22, what is it? I missed comments. Oh yeah, thank you very much. There's nothing like pair coding with 40 people. They catch everything, which is the whole idea. I don't know if anybody does pair coding. We, as a team, I typically do about 1/3 of the time pair coding, working with somebody else. And I think it really helps to tie in knowledge, and you actually end up building stuff with less bugs. It almost always works almost right away. It's not too often that's, I can't get this thing to run. And finally, this is running on server, so we need to commit it explicitly. So there we go. Now, oh, hold on. Let's add a text area field. So we need that comments So I want to add my comments. Now we're going to revise our page. How was the presentation? And I'm going to add a comments field in here, text area. It's going to have maybe 4 rows is sufficient, and comments. 2 double M's. And finally, the editor tells me I'm missing a comma. Comments. Okay, I think we're good. So let's close this and let's save that. And let's do this. And let's do that, refresh this. Okay. So let me fill it out. Charles, I attended. It wasn't too bad. Maybe it went too fast. Nice shirt. All right. And I click rate. Great. Thank you for your rating. We will invite him back and kaboom. Now go to demo.fm BetterForms now. So it's demo.fm BetterForms. Hey, somebody can paste it in, but it's easy enough to spell, and watch it live, right? And while you're doing that, I'm gonna maybe make a quick reports page here. Anybody have any questions about that so far? I'm gonna delete mine. See who the first one is. Jason, right on. There's another one. Everything else was blank. I don't know what that means. Oh, maybe
that means we didn't cover validation yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we didn't validate. We should have done that. Maybe we should add some validation. John Smith.
It's so easy. So I'll chime in and give everybody a break to catch up here. But like, one of the reasons why I've kind of been advocating for this ever since it first came out, and this goes back to something somebody else was commenting before in the comments, but a big reason to use BetterForms is just for the speed that you can do the front end web development for. Before I ever developed on FileMaker, I was a PHP developer. So I kind of gave the comparison to people that were like, well, why do you want to use FileMaker? And the reason you use FileMaker is because you can build stuff 8 times faster than you can build a web app. Well, it's the same thing for BetterForms. Like, you could build this form that you're looking at by putting together your own, Vue application or Node.js driven application, but you're responsible for consuming the data API, authenticating with FileMaker, writing the record, and everything. So the BetterForms takes away a lot of the barriers of interacting with FileMaker out of the box, but also for setting up your web host, for doing your DNS records, setting up your custom domain, getting, deploying your application on the server, all that stuff that you would normally be doing as a command line in the command line for deploying your Node application. You're taking care of that. And that takes care of a lot more than you would think. So it makes this web app development a lot more accessible to people. Because really, all you really have to learn is FileMaker scripting, which you already know, and then JSON, which if you've been doing FileMaker development over the last couple of years, that's become a lot more important for people to learn. So it's the web app building that's geared towards FileMaker developers that makes this unique, and it honestly makes it worth the price like 5 times over at least. Because you're maybe able to now do like a web project where if we took this to a company that said, hey, build this web app for us, and they said, great, it's going to cost $100,000, maybe we're doing that for like $4 or $5 grand, because it's just so much faster for us to do it through this.
Yeah, we're constantly working on our tools. And one of the nice things is you have access to somebody who's going to support you as well. When you're working on your own, you're jumping into forums. And if you've ever been to any non-FileMaker forum, PHP guys, pretty good, right? PHP, when I used to, that's how Mike and I first started talking, is about PHP stuff, because I came from the same background. And those forums were pretty good and the meetups were good. But when you get into the JavaScript world, it is dog eat dog. It's like everybody, the questions fly by, you never get answers and things like that. Whereas what's nice here is, it's a FileMaker community, but for the web apps. I'll show you how really quick. I'll show you how, I just want to make a quick results page so we can see our results here. So what I did is I actually went ahead. I just did this while we were waiting for the start the call. I came about 15 minutes early, and I created this page here. You can see it says 4 hours ago, but it's on the wrong timestamp here, so it wasn't really that long ago. It's about an hour ago, and I pasted in 2 HTML blocks. BetterForms has a built-in HTML editor. Now you don't need to know this stuff, but I think most people understand like what an H tag is and stuff like that. And it does help. It does help to know, and you'll learn it really, really quick. It's not, you're not getting full-blown CSS and full-blown HTML. So here's just some dummy text, and it says this is sample text, and it just has some stuff, and I can go in and I can, this is cool. I can write that in the middle, and there it is there, and so on. Right. So I've done that. And what I also did is I went over to another site, and this particular app, we're using some Tailwind, which is a designing toolkit, if you will, for CSS. And I saw these things. I thought this looks really cool. That would make a nice little thing for the results, right? We'll put maybe the person's name and maybe some comments or something like that underneath. Did we actually? Awesome. Yeah, we do have some comments. Love the dad cup. Thanks. Right. It's my daughter. My daughter got me this. I got like 3 of them or 2 of them. So what I did is I don't need to know how to design this, because if you have to design this and you don't know anything about CSS or HTML, I'll come back in a week and you'll have something, right? But I literally, you can look at all the code here, but really what I did is just hit copy, and I went over here and I went into my HTML block, and I'm going to erase this for a second. Now, remember, I have it on my clipboard, and I literally hit paste, and kaboom. And let's check this out. It's actually responsive because that particular component was designed like that, right? So now what I want to do is I want to fetch some data. I want that to be my result. So I went into integration, and I clicked on this, enable on form request. This is FileMaker's equivalent of on layout load script trigger. All right. And what that's going to do is when this page runs, I'm going to go into my scripts over here, and I reused one of the scripts, one of my folders here. It's called slides because it was a slideshow and I reused it. And I got this thing called on form request here. And I literally added 2 lines of code to fetch the data, to fetch all my results here. The first one is said $results equals, and then I used an execute SQL custom function. You can get these custom functions. Originally, some of them are from Carbon, or they were included. I did some coding with Geist at one time, and this is one of the custom. I think this is where it came from. Might not have been. I'm not positive. But anyhow, get column as array. And basically what it's doing is it's going to find all of the records and return them as a JSON object, or in this case, an array. And then finally, I take that same thing and I put it, remember we pulled the data out of BF model? Well, we do the same thing in reverse now. I can put data into the BF model. So I'm putting it underneath a key called results, and it's $results and JSON array. So that's what I've done so far in the back end here. I don't think I changed anything there. Yeah. And then finally on the front end here, what I did was I went and added one little line of code, this one right here. And you think, okay, I don't know how to read all this, but I have a video. We have some videos on how to do this. And this is using Vue.js, but you don't need to know much about Vue. You need to know maybe 2 things out of it. We've taken care of all the rest of the stuff that you don't really need to memorize. And V4, basically, it's an iterator, and it means for everything in model, remember models are data model for our page, .results, that's the thing that I just put in there. For every one of those, call it result. And now I can use result as an object. So this has 230K. Let me just find this. 230K right there. And we're going to put a merge variable. In FileMaker, we do curly or angle braces, double angle braces, field, table, field. FileMaker, BetterForms, we do it slightly different. In this case is result dot, and then what are our fields again? Rating, I think was one of them, right? So rating. Oh, actually, sorry, I did not call it rating in here. So let me just have a quick look. Just really quick, because I reuse some of these fields. Let's go FileMaker. There we go. Rating is, you guys remember what I stuck rating under? Approved, maybe?
I think it was weight.
Weight, okay, so I need one more. So I'm just gonna add this in here. Copy, paste, weight. Thank you.
Am I a developer now?
Yeah, you are, pretty much. Boom, just like that. You can say that you've developed more in BetterForms. You're the second most amount of work in this group in BetterForms today, right? In this call.
That's actually not true because I'm working on a BetterForms project right now.
Oh,
So we tried anyway. Okay, so we got rating there, and I'm going to put rating where it said 230. So it's rating rating, and then there was this thing here. I'm going to put I think it's comments, and that's result dot objectives. I think that's what it's called in here. It says comments here. Let me just double check. And we're almost done. Like, this is going to be crazy simple comments. I did have a call comments. Okay. Yeah, I probably should be wearing glasses. Comments so I can see the stuff. I sent out a tweet the other day. It said I'm at the age where I start to lie about what version of FileMaker I started to use, because then people know how old I am. And then it's amazing. It got like 20 responses or something. I couldn't believe it. So like everybody's in the same boat. Okay, I think we're good. I don't know. We're gonna find out. Could be some problems. Results. This is the page I created. Oh, hold on. Did I save everything? Just a second. Job app results on form request. I need to do that. That'll help. Okay, let's do this again. Refresh. Survey says kaboom. All right, we probably could wrap these results and make them the same height, and the color is terrible. So this is how you develop them for BetterForms, but you get an idea. Those are all your results right there. So I'm literally going to take this demo object, that's the data, and I'm going to turn it into some demonstration data. BetterForms has the ability to develop with demo data. So I'm going to paste that in there. So now when I go into here, I can see real data. And let me see here. And you can see them all here, but it's like way too light. So let's make that like a 900 darker gray. There we go. That's good. Shirt was okay. What do you mean it was okay? This is a great shirt. You never read your results. That's what they say, right? Never read that stuff. Okay, so that is pretty good. And I think the other thing we want is flex wrap. I just want these to wrap around, and I think that should do it. Let me just see. I made a mistake. Oh, there. I made a mistake. There, that's better. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's not. They're not perfect, but you get the idea. We could probably fix some. We could probably just let me just do this here. Margin bottom, maybe 4 pixels. That's good. Save. All right, and let's see how our results are. Wait for it. Now we got a little bit of spacing things, right? But you get the idea. And of course, we didn't do any data validation. And I think I might be missing one of the fields. One of the fields is wrong, but I just did this super quick. But you get an idea. You get an idea how easy it is to develop that kind of stuff. And there's all of our results there, right? And that's just / results.
Yeah. So awesome, man. Awesome demo. Awesome display of what's going on. I'm sure everybody on this call looks like what was that? Maxim tape. What was that thing where the guy's on the couch and he's just blown back? So what I'm going to do? Yeah.
XLR, the Maxell XLR series of cassettes.
Yeah. That was a fire hose on steroids of information and everything. So there's a couple things. Katie, who's on the call, I've recruited her to help me with some of the construction of this meeting, of this meetup. She's put together a little YouTube page for us. She's going to be cutting the videos, putting them together. She's got most of them done. She'll put this one on there. I'll announce it. I think the only other way to get started with FM BetterForms is to get started with FM BetterForms. Meaning, I'm going to send out a link to Mike Burgie's calendar, because he's our resident expert, and I think that would be a good way to book a little bit of time with him to just have about a half an hour conversation on what your use case is, what you're trying to do, and then we can get you into some kind of budget development or product development meeting and go from there. At the end of the day, if you're a developer, I would recommend probably maybe going right to Delphs, because he'll be able to get you set up in the environment and everything. And then if you're a user, or if you're a developer that has developing kind of questions, we can certainly help you out. But I think, Dels, you offer just like 0 to 100 help with the
Correct. Yeah, we can work with any level of engagement. We have some people we simply consult with on an architectural level. Okay, you should strategize it this way. Here's a way we're looking at monetization if it's a monetized app and things like that, because we've been down this road a whole bunch of times. Or we can do end-to-end build out as well, including design services. So at any level.
Gotcha.
You know, our goal is that you use a course, is that you use our product and you're successful with it. So that's really, really important to us. That,
Yeah.
you know, they have a high level of success.
Okay, great. Well, I'll put some information together in a follow-up. We'll get that video out toot sweet, because I know a lot of you have asked what just happened. Delphs, thanks so much for coming by. And,
Well, thanks for having us.
showing your wares. The next meeting that we have is March 18th. Again, we're always looking for subject matter. So if you have anything that can help us out, if you feel like you have an idea of things we can do, throw it to either office hours at Go Mainspring or M. Michaels. Send it to me directly, and we can get this thing cooking. Next meeting is March 18th, and it's always the third Thursday. You can forward the invite to anybody that you think that might be interested in your organization. And I'd love feedback on the whole concept of bringing products into this as well. I've got a couple other ideas of folks that we work with that we like. And it might make sense, 360 Works or Geist, or some of these other folks too. I don't want to turn this into a stream of advertising, but on the other hand, I want to make sure that if you're a developer, if you're an end user, that you're being exposed to the full rainbow of FileMaker tools and development. So I think that pretty much wraps up our time. Again, Delphs, thank you so much. I mean, it was short notice. I called you last Thursday, asked you if you could be on. You are the man for showing up and putting on such an incredible demo. And
thanks for having me. And if you ever want to talk about like the architecture and things like that as well, we do a lot of designing of apps and a lot of techniques, if you will, to allow your app to scale, not just so much performance. We got that down in FileMaker, but what about to scale in terms of structure and software as a service and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody, and we will see you in March.